Earth's horrifying secret weapon left the Galactic Council quaking in terror. High Counselor Naso's iridescent red scales flashed with rage. The 8-foot Vorkarian reptilian narrowed his piercing yellow eyes, surveying the emergency gathering of the Galactic Council with a snarl. He slammed a clawed fist on the crystalline table, sending a web of cracks through its surface. Humans have developed an abomination, the Nemesis device. It can vaporize entire star systems in an instant, and their scientist, Nolan Reyes, will test it on our Zalthor colony, murdering 5 billion, unless we act now. 12 alien counselors erupted into panicked shouts. Different species, different agendas, but one shared fear uniting them all. Humanity's wrath was coming. 72 hours, that's all they had to stop the apocalypse. 35-year-old Nolan Reyes stared out the window of his research station, a cruel smile twisting his face. The lead scientist's black hair was slicked back, his muscular frame covered in tattoos, memorializing Colony X-371. 10 years ago, the Vorkarians destroyed his homeworld, reduced it to ashes. Now humanity would even the score 1,000-fold. His dark eyes flicked to the pulsing red Nemesis device, his fist clenching. His parents, his sister. All dead, because the Council deemed humans too aggressive to join the galactic community. "I'll show them aggressive," Nolan growled as he began the activation sequence. The device started to hum. Across the galaxy, the Council argued and dithered. Bureaucracy, cowardice, squabbling over petty grievances while annihilation loomed. The human fleets made their final preparations, each ship a gleaming dart poised to strike. It all hinged on the Nemesis device, their secret weapon. If it failed, Earth would burn. If it succeeded, the galaxy would be theirs for the taking. At a top-secret military base deep within Earth's Rocky Mountains, Nolan Reyes strode purposefully toward the Nemesis device. The 10-foot-tall, matte black cylinder pulsed with an eerie red glow emanating from its energy core. Reyes' team of elite soldiers flanked him. The grizzled Captain Jack Hudson, his left cheek marred by a deep scar, the bald, tattooed weapons specialist Lieutenant Marcus Lee, the bearded demolitions expert Sergeant Adam Roth, and the wiry, blonde-haired tech expert Corporal Ethan Novak. "Load it up, boys," Reyes ordered as they approached the HNS Retribution, a sleek stealth frigate bristling with advanced weaponry. "We've got a date with Destiny on Zalthor." The team maneuvered the Nemesis device onto the frigate with practiced efficiency, securing it in the cargo hold. Just as they were about to board, an ear-splitting alarm tore through the facility. Colonel Samuel Briggs, the base commander with salt-and-pepper hair and a stern expression, rushed over to Reyes. "We've got a breach. Vorkarian infiltration team on the perimeter." Reyes' eyes narrowed. "Secure the device," he barked at his men. "Colonel, with me. We've got some uninvited guests to deal with." As Reyes and Colonel Briggs raced to the breach point, the sounds of plasma fire and explosions echoed through the corridors. They arrived to find the base's defenders locked in a fierce firefight with the Vorkarian infiltrators, their advanced plasma weapons and personal cloaking devices giving them a significant advantage. Reyes and Briggs dove into cover, joining the fray. Plasma bolts sizzled past their heads as they returned fire, the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone filling the air. The human soldiers fought with grim determination, but the Vorkarians' superior technology was taking its toll. "Fall back," Reyes shouted over the din of battle. "Lure them into the kill zone." The human defenders retreated down the corridor, drawing the Vorkarians into a pre-planned ambush. As the infiltrators pursued, Reyes triggered a series of hidden explosives, the detonations ripping through the Vorkarian ranks. The tide turned, and the remaining infiltrators were quickly neutralized. But the victory came at a cost. Several human soldiers lay dead or wounded, and the facility had suffered significant damage. Reyes and his team regrouped at the HNS Retribution, the Nemesis device secure in its hold. As they prepared to depart, Colonel Briggs clasped Reyes's shoulder. "Give 'em hell, Nolan, for Earth, for Colony X-371. Reyes nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the stars above. The HNS Retribution lifted off, its engines flaring as it pierced the atmosphere. The Vorkarian colony world of Zalthor awaited, unaware of the apocalypse that was coming for them. The HNS Retribution tore through the void of hyperspace, its engines thrumming with power as it hurtled towards the Vorkarian colony world of Zalthor. On board, Nolan Reyes and his team stood ready, their faces grim with determination as they prepared for the mission that would decide the fate of billions. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently as it dropped out of hyperspace, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. On the bridge, Captain Hudson leaned forward in his chair, his eyes widening as he took in the sight before them. 3 massive warships loomed ahead, blocking their path to Zalthor. The Vorkarian dreadnought VSS Imperator, its hull bristling with weapons, flanked by the sleek arachnoid frigate ASS Shadowstrike and the menacing reptilian cruiser RSS Venom. "Incoming transmission," Corporal Novak reported, his fingers flying across the comm panel. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred visage of Commander Zorgax, a battle-hardened Vorkarian with a missing left eye and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. "Human vessel, this is Commander Zorgax of the Galactic Council Joint Task Force," he growled, his voice dripping with menace. "Stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded. Surrender the Nemesis device or face the consequences." Captain Hudson leaned forward, his jaw set. "Commander Zorgax, this is Captain Jack Hudson of the HNS Retribution. Our mission is non-negotiable. We will not stand down, and we will not surrender the device. Any attempt to board our vessel will be met with deadly force." Zorgax snarled, his remaining eye narrowing. "So be it, human. You have sealed your fate." The transmission cut out, and the bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as the crew prepared for battle. In the cargo hold, Reyes and his team armed themselves with advanced human weaponry, donning exoskeleton suits and activating the prototype energy shield generator. "This is it, boys," Reyes said, his voice steady as he checked the charge on his plasma rifle. "We've trained for this moment. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every human who lost their life to the Vorkarians, for Colony X-371. His team nodded, their faces set with determination. They took up defensive positions around the Nemesis device, ready to defend it with their lives. As the standoff continued, a sudden impact rocked the HNS Retribution. A reptilian boarding pod had launched from the RSS Venom, latching onto the hull of the human ship. Alarms blared as the pod breached the airlock, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. Lieutenant Sizak, a towering scaled warrior with razor-sharp claws, led a squad of heavily armed reptilian shock troopers towards the bridge, their weapons at the ready. Reyes and his team exchanged grim looks, knowing that the fate of billions hung in the balance. Captain Hudson's voice crackled over the comm. "Boarders inbound. Reyes, defend the device at all costs. We'll hold them off as long as we can." Reyes nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "Understood, Captain. We won't let them take it." As the reptilian shock troopers drew closer, Reyes and his team prepared for the fight of their lives, determined to see their mission through to the end, no matter the cost. The sound of plasma fire and guttural reptilian battle cries filled the corridors of the HNS Retribution as Lieutenant Sack's shock troopers clashed with Reyes's team in brutal close-quarters combat. The humans' exoskeleton suits absorbed the brunt of the reptilian savage blows, while their energy shields flickered and sparked under the onslaught of plasma bolts. Reyes ducked as a reptilian warrior lunged at him, its razor-sharp claws slicing through the air inches from his face. He slammed the butt of his rifle into the creature's scaled head, sending it reeling back before finishing it off with a burst of plasma fire. Reyes shouted over the din of battle. "We need an edge!" Lieutenant Marcus Lee, his face smeared with blood and sweat, nodded grimly. He tore open an access panel on his plasma rifle, his fingers flying over the circuitry within. With a final twist of a wire, the rifle hummed with a new, ominous frequency. Cover your ears, Lee yelled, aiming the modified weapon at the advancing reptilians. A deafening, high-pitched shriek erupted from the rifle, the sonic pulse tearing through the air. The reptilian shock troopers writhed in agony, their scales rippling and their eyes bulging as the sound wave disrupted their senses. They collapsed to the ground, twitching and convulsing. On the bridge of the VSS Imperator, Commander Zorgak slammed his fist on the console. His scarred face twisted with rage. "Enough of this," he snarled. "All ships open fire on the human vessel. Disable their engines and weapons. I want that device." The Vorkarian dreadnought and its accompanying warships unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, the energy bolts slamming into the HNS Retribution's shields. The human ship shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. "Shields at 30%, Captain Hudson yelled, gripping the arms of his chair. "Novak, activate the phase shift cloaking device." Corporal Ethan Novak's fingers danced across his console, sweat beading on his brow. With a final command, the HNS Retribution shimmered and vanished from view, the experimental cloaking technology rendering the ship invisible to the enemy's sensors. "We won't be able to maintain the cloak for long," Novak warned, his voice strained. In the cargo hold, Reyes gathered his team, their faces grim with determination. "We need to end this," he said, his eyes hard. "We're going to board the VSS Imperator and capture Zorgax. Roth, rig some charges along the hull. Create a diversion. Hudson and I will infiltrate the dreadnought and secure the target." Sergeant Adam Roth, his beard singed from the fighting, grinned wolfishly. "With pleasure," he growled, hefting a satchel of explosives. As Roth set to work, Reyes and Hudson boarded a cloaked boarding pod, the small craft silently detaching from the HNS Retribution and gliding towards the looming bulk of the VSS Imperator. Explosions suddenly blossomed along the HNS Retribution's hull, the charges detonating in a dazzling display of fire and debris. In the confusion, the boarding pod slipped through the dreadnought's defenses, latching onto its armored hull. Reyes and Hudson emerged from the pod, their weapons at the ready. They moved swiftly through the alien ship, their enhanced reflexes and advanced weaponry giving them an edge against the Vorkarian crew. Plasma bolts filled the air as they fought their way towards the bridge, the smell of burnt metal and ozone thick in their nostrils. Vorkarian warriors fell before their onslaught, the humans driven by a grim determination to see their mission through. As Reyes and Hudson fought their way deeper into the VSS Imperator, the corridors grew narrower, the shadows deeper. Plasma bolts sizzled past their heads, the acrid stench of melted metal filling their nostrils. Suddenly a massive figure emerged from the darkness. Kraxus, a towering Vorkarian warrior, his scales covered in intricate tattoos, his eyes glowing an eerie purple. He fixed his gaze on Reyes, a cruel smile playing across his reptilian features. "Oh, you've come far, human," Kraxus hissed, his voice a guttural rasp. "But your journey ends here." With a flick of his wrist, Kraxus sent a wave of telekinetic energy surging towards Reyes, the invisible force slamming him against the bulkhead. Reyes grunted in pain, his vision blurring. Hudson leaped forward, his prototype plasma sword flaring to life. The blade hummed with power as he slashed at Kraxus, the Vorkarian barely managing to dodge the searing plasma. Kraxus retaliated with a blast of psionic energy, the purple light engulfing Hudson. The human soldier screamed in agony, his body convulsing as the psychic assault tore at his mind. Reyes staggered to his feet, raising his plasma rifle. He fired a volley of shots at Kraxus, the bolts splashing harmlessly against the Vorkarian's telekinetic shield. On the HNS Retribution, chaos reigned. Lieutenant Lee and Corporal Novak worked frantically to repair the ship's damaged systems, sparks flying from ruptured conduits. Sergeant Roth barked orders to the remaining crew, coordinating their defense against the relentless Vorkarian assault. Plasma bolts and bullets filled the air as humans and Vorkarians clashed in brutal close-quarters combat. Back on the VSS Imperator, Reyes and Kraxus's duel reached a fever pitch. The Vorkarians' telekinetic attacks grew more powerful, more precise. Reyes' plasma rifle clicked empty, his exoskeleton suit sparking, and smoking from the psychic onslaught. Hudson, still reeling from Craxus's mental assault, lunged at the Vorkarian. His plasma sword slicing through the air, Craxus caught the blade with his bare hand, the superheated plasma searing his scales. With a roar of pain and rage, he wrenched the sword from Hudson's grip and sent the human soldier flying with a telekinetic blast. On the bridge of the VSS Imperator, Commander Zorgax watched the battle unfold, his remaining eye narrowing in frustration. As Reyes and Craxus's duel reached its climax, Zorgax slammed his fist on the console. "Ramming speed," he snarled. "Destroy the human ship no matter the cost." The Vorkarian dreadnought surged forward, its engines flaring with power as it hurtled towards the HNS Retribution. Hudson, seeing the approaching vessel on the viewscreen, shouted a warning to Reyes. Reyes, his face contorted with effort, overloaded his plasma rifle. The weapon hummed with an ominous pitch, the energy building within it. With a final desperate cry, Reyes unleashed the massive energy surge directly at Craxus. The blast caught the Vorkarian warrior off guard, overwhelming his psionic defenses. Craxus howled in agony as the energy coursed through his body, his tattoos glowing white-hot. He collapsed to the deck, unconscious, his scales smoking. Reyes and Hudson exchanged a brief, exhausted glance before sprinting towards the VSS Imperator's bridge, racing against time to stop Commander Zorgax and prevent the destruction of the HNS Retribution. The bridge of the VSS Imperator erupted into chaos as Reyes and Hudson burst through the blast doors, weapons drawn. Commander Zorgax stood before them, flanked by a squad of elite Vorkarian guards, their scales glinting in the dim light. Without hesitation, Zorgax hefted his plasma cannon and opened fire, the searing bolts forcing Reyes and Hudson to dive for cover behind the control consoles. The Vorkarian guards joined the fray, their weapons spitting deadly energy as they advanced on the human's position. Reyes and Hudson returned fire, plasma bolts and bullets filling the air. Sparks flew from shattered consoles, and the acrid stench of burning circuitry filled their nostrils. They were pinned down, the relentless suppressing fire from Zorgax's cannon keeping them trapped. Just as it seemed their mission would end in failure, a tremendous explosion rocked the VSS Imperator. The deck bucked beneath their feet, sending Zorgax and his guards stumbling. Reyes risked a glance at the viewscreen and saw the HNS Retribution, still cloaked, banking away from the Vorkarian dreadnought. They had fired a salvo of quantum torpedoes, crippling the Imperator's engines. Seizing the moment, Reyes and Hudson leaped from cover, charging the disoriented Vorkarians. Hudson's plasma sword flashed to life, the blade humming with deadly energy. He moved like a blur, cutting through the guards with lightning precision. Reyes lunged at Zorgax, his rifle forgotten as they grappled in close quarters. They traded blows, fists, and claws, seeking vulnerable flesh. In the struggle, their weapons clattered to the deck, forgotten. "I know why you're here," Zorgax hissed, his reptilian eyes boring into Reyes. Colony X-371 wasn't just another human settlement, it was a research facility developing your precious Nemesis device. Reyes snarled, his grip tightening on Zorgax's armor. "You slaughtered innocent people." Zorgax laughed, a cruel grating sound. "We were following orders, human. There are those within the Galactic Council who fear your kind's potential. Your technological advancement threatens the balance of power." Rage surged through Reyes, and with a roar he overpowered Zorgax, slamming him against the bulkhead. "Who gave the order? Tell me!" Before Zorgax could respond, a plasma bolt seared the air beside Reyes's head. A Vorkarian guard, loyal to the end, had taken aim at Reyes. Time seemed to slow as Hudson leaped in front of his friend, the plasma bolt striking him square in the chest. He crumpled to the deck, his sword clattering from his grasp. "No!" Reyes screamed, catching Hudson as he fell. The captain's eyes were already growing dim, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Finish the mission, Nolan," Hudson whispered, his voice fading. "Avenge our people, avenge me!" With a final shuddering breath, Captain Jack Hudson, Reyes's friend and mentor, died in his arms. Grief and fury warred within Reyes as he gently laid Hudson's body on the deck. He turned, his eyes locking on Zorgax, who was stumbling towards an escape pod, desperate to flee the crippled dreadnought. Reyes snatched up his rifle and sprinted after the Vorkarian commander, his heart pounding with the need for answers and revenge. He would uncover the truth behind the attack on Colony X-371 and the mysterious faction within the Galactic Council that pulled the strings. Zorgax would pay for his crimes, and the galaxy would learn the true extent of humanity's resolve. Reyes sprinted through the corridors of the HNS Retribution, his heart pounding as he raced towards the hangar bay. He had to stop Zorgax from escaping with the truth about Colony X-371 and the Galactic Council's dark secrets. He leaped into a sleek one-man fighter craft, its engines roaring to life as he sealed the cockpit. With a burst of acceleration, Reyes launched from the hangar bay, chasing after Zorgax's escape pod as it fled through the debris field surrounding the crippled Vorkarian dreadnought. The two crafts weaved through the wreckage, Zorgax proving to be a skilled pilot as he evaded Reyes' attacks with daring precision. Plasma bolts sizzled past Reyes' cockpit as he pushed his fighter to its limits, determined to catch the fleeing Vorkarian. "You can't run forever, Zorgax," Reyes shouted over the comm channel. "I want answers." Zorgax's laughter crackled through the speakers. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, human. The Nemesis device is more than just a weapon. It's the key to unlocking an ancient power hidden within the Vorkarian homeworld, a power that could grant its wielder dominion over the entire galaxy." Reyes gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on the controls. He couldn't let this technology fall into the wrong hands. With a daring maneuver, he flanked Zorgax's escape pod, lining up the perfect shot. His finger squeezed the trigger, and a plasma bolt lanced out, striking the pod's engines. The escape pod sputtered and died, floating dead in space. Reyes let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, as Lieutenant Lee's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got him, sir. Bring in the pod aboard now." Reyes docked his fighter and strode into the hangar bay, his eyes locked on the battered escape pod. Sergeant Roth and Corporal Novak stood nearby, securing the Nemesis device and ensuring it hadn't been damaged in the battle. The escape pod hissed open, revealing a battered but defiant Zorgax. Reyes marched up to the Vorkarian commander, grabbing him by the collar of his armor. "Where is this ancient technology?" he demanded. "What is the Galactic Council planning?" Zorgax sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "You'll never find it, human, and even if you did, you lack the power to control it." Suddenly, Zorgax's armor began to glow, a high-pitched whine filling the hangar bay. Reyes' eyes widened as he realized what was happening. A self-destruct mechanism. He reacted on instinct, grabbing a portable energy shield from a nearby crate and activating it just as Zorgax's armor detonated. The blast was contained by the shield, but the force still sent Reyes flying back, his ears ringing. He scrambled to his feet, rushing to Zorgax's side. The Vorkarian commander lay grievously wounded, his life slipping away. With his final breath, Zorgax uttered a cryptic phrase in his native language, his words barely audible over the crackling of his damaged armor. Then he fell still, his eyes staring sightlessly at the hangar bay ceiling. Reyes stood slowly, his mind racing as he processed Zorgax's final words, a clue to the location of the ancient technology. He turned to face his crew, his expression grim. "Set course for the Vorkarian homeworld," he ordered. "We have a mission to complete." As the HNS Retribution tore through the stars, Reyes knew that the fate of the galaxy now rested on his shoulders. He had to find this ancient technology before the Galactic Council could use it for their own nefarious purposes. The future of humanity and every other species in the galaxy depended on it. The HNS Retribution tore through the void, its engines screaming as it hurtled towards the Vorkarian homeworld. On board, Reyes paced the bridge, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he and his team pored over the cryptic final words of Commander Zorgax. Corporal Novak, his blond hair disheveled and his eyes bloodshot from hours of intense study, suddenly leaped to his feet. "I've got it!" he exclaimed, his voice trembling with excitement. Zorgax's phrase, Kruzak Vorkul Nar. It's a reference to an ancient Vorkarian legend about a powerful artifact known as the Heart of Vorkar. Reyes leaned in, his eyes narrowing. The Heart of Vorkar, what is it? Novak's fingers flew across his console, bringing up a holographic display of a pulsing, crystalline object. According to the legend, the heart is a crystal imbued with immense energy, capable of granting its wielder godlike powers. It's said to be kept in a hidden temple deep within the Vorkarian jungle. Sergeant Roth, his muscular frame tense with anticipation, gripped his plasma rifle. If the Vorkarians get their hands on that kind of power... Reyes nodded grimly. We can't let that happen. Novak, do we have coordinates for this temple? Novak tapped a few commands into his console. Yes, sir. I've triangulated the location based on the information in the legend. As the HNS Retribution approached the Vorkarian homeworld, the ship's alarms blared to life. On the view screen, a fleet of Vorkarian warships, their hulls bristling with weapons, moved to intercept the human vessel. Reyes turned to Lieutenant Lee. Marcus, I need you to lead a diversionary attack on that fleet. Draw their fire and keep them occupied while we make planetfall. Lee grinned, his shaved head gleaming in the bridge's lights. With pleasure, sir. He sprinted from the bridge, barking orders into his comm unit. Reyes turned to Roth and a squad of human commandos. Gear up, we're taking a cloaked drop ship to the surface. We've got a temple to find. Minutes later, Reyes and his team were hurtling through the Vorkarian atmosphere in a sleek black dropship, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to enemy sensors. As they neared the coordinates of the temple, Reyes caught a glimpse of the jungle below, a writhing sea of green, broken only by the twisting, vine-choked ruins of ancient Vorkarian structures. The dropship touched down in a small clearing, and Reyes and his team emerged into the oppressive heat and humidity of the Vorkarian jungle. The air was thick with the chittering of alien insects and the distant cries of predatory beasts. Roth consulted his handheld scanner. Temple's this way, he said, pointing into the dense foliage. About 2 clicks northeast. Reyes nodded. Let's move, stay sharp and keep your eyes open. We're not alone out here. The journey through the jungle was a grueling one. The human soldiers, despite their advanced gear and training, struggled against the planet's harsh environment. They hacked through dense undergrowth with plasma machetes, their boots sinking into the muddy earth with each step. Venomous serpents coiled around low-hanging branches, their eyes glinting with malice as the soldiers passed. In the distance, the roar of some gigantic, unseen predator echoed through the trees. After hours of exhausting march, they reached the temple, an ancient crumbling structure of weathered stone, its walls thick with vines and moss. Intricate carvings depicting Vorkarian warriors and strange alien gods covered every surface, their eyes seeming to follow the humans as they approached. Suddenly, the jungle erupted with plasma fire. A squad of Vorkarian elite warriors, their scales glistening with camouflage patterns, emerged from the undergrowth, their weapons spitting deadly energy. At their head was a massive, scarred Vorkarian wielding a crackling plasma hammer, Kravax, a living legend among his people. Reyes and his team dove for cover, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads. Roth and the commandos returned fire, their weapons booming in the confined space of the temple entrance. Kravax bellowed a challenge, his voice shaking the stone beneath their feet. He charged forward, his plasma hammer held high, straight towards Reyes. Reyes leaped to meet him, his own plasma sword flaring to life in his hands. They clashed in a blaze of energy, the humans' agility and advanced weaponry pitted against the Vorkarians' raw strength and centuries of warrior tradition. Plasma hammer met plasma sword in a shower of sparks, each blow shaking the earth and filling the air with the ozone stench of ionized atmosphere. Around them the battle raged, human commandos and Vorkarian elites locked in vicious hand-to-hand combat. Plasma bolts flew, searing flesh and stone alike. The screams of the wounded and dying mingled with the roar of Kravax's hammer and the hum of Reyes's sword. Slowly, painfully, Reyes gained the upper hand. He ducked under a wild swing of Kravax's hammer, the superheated head missing his skull by a hair's breadth. Seeing an opening, he lunged forward, his plasma sword slicing through the Vorkarian's thick hide like a hot knife through butter. Kravax stumbled back, a look of shock and disbelief on his alien features. He toppled backward, his hammer falling from his lifeless claws and clattering to the stone floor. Reyes stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving, his sword still glowing with heat. Around him, the last of the Vorkarian elites fell, cut down by the grim-faced human commandos. "To the temple," Reyes ordered, his voice hoarse from exertion. "We've got a crystal to secure." With Roth and the surviving commandos at his back, Reyes entered the ancient structure, the darkness swallowing them as they descended into its depths. Somewhere ahead, the heart of Vorkar waited, its power a beacon drawing them forward into the unknown. The ancient stone corridors of the Vorkarian temple were a labyrinth of death, each twist and turn presenting a new and deadly challenge. Reyes and his team moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready, as they navigated the intricate traps and puzzles designed to protect the heart of Vorkar. A pressure plate sank beneath Sergeant Roth's boot, and a barrage of razor-sharp spikes shot from the walls. Roth reacted with lightning reflexes, diving forward and rolling to safety as the spikes clattered against the stone floor behind him. "Careful," he grunted, picking himself up and dusting off his armor. "This place is a damn death trap." Reyes nodded, his eyes scanning the corridor ahead. "Stay sharp, we're not leaving here without that artifact." They pressed on, Roth's demolitions expertise proving invaluable as they encountered increasingly complex security systems. A series of pressure plates triggered a cascading wall of fire, which Roth managed to disable by rewiring an ancient control panel. A room filled with swirling toxic gas was rendered harmless by a precisely placed explosive charge. As they delved deeper into the temple, the air grew thick with a palpable sense of ancient power. The walls thrummed with energy, and the very stone seemed to whisper secrets long forgotten. Finally, they reached the central chamber, a vast circular room dominated by a massive, pulsating crystal suspended in a beam of shimmering energy. The heart of Vorkar, the artifact they had fought so hard to claim, was within their grasp. But as Reyes stepped forward, a shimmering hologram flickered to life before him. An ancient Vorkarian, clad in ornate robes and bearing a staff topped with a miniature replica of the heart, regarded the human with eyes that seemed to pierce his very soul. "Greetings, Nolan Reyes," the elder spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I am Nexus, guardian of the heart of Vorkar. I have watched your journey and witnessed the sacrifices you have made." Reyes lowered his weapon, his brow furrowed. "What is this? Some kind of trick?" Nexus shook his head. "No trick, human. The heart of Vorkar is more than a mere artifact. It is a sentient being, an AI created by my ancestors to guide and protect our civilization. It has waited millennia for a worthy champion to claim its power and restore balance to the galaxy." Reyes glanced at the pulsating crystal, realization dawning in his eyes. The heart of Vorkar could be the key to ending the conflict between humans and Vorkarians, a chance to bridge the gap between their species. "I accept your challenge," Reyes said, his voice steady with resolve. "I will prove myself worthy of the heart's power." Nexus nodded, and the chamber dissolved into a swirling vortex of light and energy. Reyes found himself standing alone, facing a series of intense mental and physical trials. Visions of his past, his present, and potential futures played out before him, each one testing his resolve, courage, and compassion. He saw the fall of Colony X-371, the death of his family, and the sacrifices made by his fallen comrades. He felt the weight of the Nemesis device, the burden of the mission, and the hopes and fears of humanity resting on his shoulders. Through it all, Reyes persevered. He drew upon his experiences, his training, and the bonds he had forged with his team. He overcame each challenge, proving himself worthy of Nexus's power. As he completed the final trial, the heart of Vorkar shattered, and a brilliant energy engulfed him. Reyes felt the power of Nexus flowing through his veins, infusing his body and mind with an ancient, cosmic knowledge. He emerged from the light transformed, his eyes glowing with the same shimmering energy as the heart. With his newfound abilities, he could sense the thoughts and emotions of the Vorkarians, could communicate with them on a level beyond words. Reyes and his team emerged from the temple, ready to face the challenges ahead. But as they stepped into the sunlight, they found themselves surrounded by a contingent of Vorkarian warships, their weapons trained on the humans. A cloaked figure stepped forward, his face obscured by the shadow of his hood. "Nolan Reyes," he spoke, his voice cold and commanding. "I am the Overseer, leader of the true Galactic Council. Surrender the power of the heart of Vorkar, or face the consequences." Reyes stood tall, Nexus's power thrumming through his body. He faced the Overseer, ready to confront the true mastermind behind the conflict that had consumed both their civilizations. Reyes stood tall, Nexus's power surging through his veins as he faced the Overseer and the assembled Vorkarian warships. The air crackled with tension, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. "I challenge you to a final confrontation, Overseer," Reyes called out, his voice echoing across the barren landscape. "Let us settle this once and for all." The Overseer stepped forward, his cloak falling away to reveal a grotesque insectoid form with chitinous armor and pulsating, multifaceted eyes. "I accept your challenge, human," he hissed, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "But know that you face not just me, but the might of the Quarath, the true masters of this galaxy." Reyes's eyes widened as the Overseer's words sank in. The Quarath, an ancient and powerful race, had been manipulating the Galactic Council for eons, orchestrating conflicts and sowing discord to maintain their dominion. The Overseer lunged at Reyes, his clawed appendages crackling with psychic energy. Reyes met the attack head-on, Nexus's power forming a shimmering shield around him. The two combatants clashed in a blinding flash of light, their energies intertwining in a devastating display of power. The ground shook beneath their feet as they exchanged blows, each strike leveling mountains and vaporizing vast swathes of jungle. Reyes, guided by Nexus's wisdom and the memories of his fallen comrades, fought with a fierce determination, matching the Overseer's relentless assault blow for blow. As the battle raged on, the very fabric of reality began to warp and distort around them. Reyes could feel the strain on his body as Nexus's power pushed him to his limits. The Overseer, his form ravaged by the destructive energies, pressed his attack, his psychic blasts tearing through Reyes's defenses. In a moment of clarity, Reyes realized that there was only one way to end this conflict, to defeat the Overseer and the Quarath's machinations. He had to sacrifice himself and the power of the heart of Vorkar. With a final defiant cry, Reyes unleashed the full might of Nexus, channeling the ancient AI's energy through his own body and directing it towards the Overseer. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic, a blinding flash of light that consumed both Reyes and the Overseer, their forms disintegrating in the maelstrom of energy. The shockwave from the explosion rippled across the planet's surface, carving a massive crater into the Earth and sending shockwaves through the assembled fleets. As the dust settled, a deafening silence fell over the battlefield, the magnitude of Reyes's sacrifice dawning on all who witnessed it. In the aftermath of the battle, Lieutenant Lee and Craxus, the once bitter enemies now united by a common cause, led the remnants of their fleets in a desperate search for answers. They combed through the wreckage of the Quarath ships, piecing together the fragmented data logs and encrypted transmissions. What they discovered was a truth that shook them to their core. The Quarath had orchestrated the conflict between the humans and Vorkarians, manipulating events from behind the scenes to weaken both species, making them ripe for conquest. With this knowledge, the humans and Vorkarians put aside their differences, forging an alliance born of necessity and a shared desire for justice. They vowed to stand together against the Quarath and their machinations, to defend the fragile peace that Reyes had given his life to achieve. As the Alliance mourned the loss of Reyes and the countless others who had sacrificed themselves for this cause, they knew that his legacy would live on. Lieutenant Lee, now promoted to captain, took command of the HNS Retribution, renaming it the HNS Reyes, in honor of their fallen hero. The ship, a symbol of unity and hope, set off into the stars, its crew determined to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Nemesis device, once a tool of vengeance, was dismantled, its components repurposed to help rebuild the war-torn worlds and forge a new future for the galaxy. And so, even in death, Nolan Reyes's legacy endured, not as a destroyer but as a unifier, a champion of peace in a galaxy that had known only war. His sacrifice had shown them the way forward, and now it was up to them to walk that path, to build a future where the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.